All righty. Well, hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Monterey Bay Aquarium here live all across the internet where you can find us hopefully right now if my screens are correct. We should be live on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Facebook for yet another live stream Q&A for our Into the Deep, exploring our undiscovered ocean countdown to opening. We're opening up here April 9th, 2022, and we are so excited to be able to bring you closer to the deep sea. Joining me today, as always, currently in this particular 4-porthole setup, we have Emily, my good buddy, my pal, right below deck there. So I'm on the upper level. There's Emily right down there. Emily, how you doing today?
I'm doing possum, jawsome. All of the adjectives.
All the
We have
puns
too
there.
many puns with it.
We've got
it's there.
We've got the Japanese spider crab behind you there. So we're doing clawsome.
So clawsome.
There you go.
Today.
Exactly.
There we go.
And currently joining us right now here on this live stream, you saw it in the title, you saw it in the preview, and hopefully for the folks who are watching right now, if you just want to give us some thumbs up in the chat, make sure that we're coming through loud and clear, make sure that you can hear us okay. Don't want to recreate the last stream's hiccup. And if you haven't checked that out, we had a wonderful time with our Director of Husbandry Operations, Paul Clarkson, in our first exhibit preview. But joining us today, we have some unsung heroes that we are about to sing the praises of as high as we possibly can. Not literally, because it's already raining a little bit here in Pacific Grove. We don't want that downpour from me opening up those pipes. But for the pipes stream, this water quality stream, we have Team Water Quality that is over on this side here of the portholes. We'll start maybe with Kasie and go to Kyle. Can you introduce yourselves a little bit? What is your role here at the aquarium? We're so excited to have you for this water quality stream.
We're so excited to be here, Pat and Emily. Thanks for having us. Hello to everyone watching. We're really glad to talk to you about this really neat exhibit that we're really excited to share with you guys. My name's Kasie Regnier. I'm the Director of Applied Water Science, and basically that means I have a team of about 30 people working with me that make me feel stupid every day. It's pretty much true, and Kyle is one of them. But what we do is anything water related in the aquarium, the engineering behind the life support, the operation of the life support, the design of it. We have a water science lab where we do all the chemistry, microbiology, instrumentation related to keeping all of our animals and our exhibits healthy, happy, and beautiful. We also focus a lot on keeping our water clean when it goes back out to the bay. So we have environmental scientists making sure that the water we bring in from the Monterey Bay, because we do bring our water in from the bay itself for all of our exhibits, we send it back out to the bay, and we want to make sure it's cleaner and healthier when it goes back out to the bay than even when it comes in. So we've got a whole team of people that are really just focused on water, water science, engineering, chemistry. And I've brought a ringer today in the form of Kyle, who I'll let introduce himself, who is one of our design engineers who really works on the engineering and this Into the Deep exhibit specifically.
That's waterful. Let's get to Kyle.
Kyle. Yes.
Thanks, Kasie. I appreciate the introduction. So I'm Kyle Harrigan. I am the water systems engineer here at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So my job primarily comprises engineering, as you might expect, but a lot of the design of life support systems for all of our exhibits. So these are systems that support the life that we have here. You know, how we maintain the water, are the parameters correct? And with regards to the deep, what I've been focusing on for basically my entire tenure here over the last 4 years is how do we take water out of the surface of the bay and reversibly convert it to the kind of water you might find down at the deep sea? How do you change the pH? How do you change the oxygen? How do you keep it cold? And then making all of that work in the context of our existing systems here.
That's fascinating. And yeah, for the folks that are tuning in here to the live stream, we have it there in the title. We've titled it loosely Recreating the Extreme, because we have a seawater system that has done us very, very well here at the aquarium since we opened in 1984, bringing in the water directly from the Monterey Bay, passing through the exhibits at night, unfiltered, with all the little spores and plankton and other animals that can really recreate that authentic Monterey Bay algal and microscopic community there on the rocks, and then filtered during the day so you folks can actually see it. But the water in the deep sea, and we're going to get into it on this live stream, the water in the deep sea is very different than surface sunlit waters. There's a lot of interesting physics and chemistry going on out there, and to recreate that for the animals that we're likely to have on display during the time that this exhibit is open. For those of you in the chat that are wondering how long the Into the Deep will be around, we're hoping many, many years. So get your tickets now, get your memberships now, so you can come back and visit as often as possible. But to recreate that extreme, there's a lot of work, especially for us land-based people trying to mimic what the world has been doing for so long. Now, Emily,
Yes.
on our last stream, we had quite the engaged community on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook, over on Discord as well, asking us a ton of questions. I know you're monitoring that right now, but the first thing that we wanted to get to for the folks who watched the last stream is we teased a little bit about a balloon worm. So I don't know how's the chat looking right now. Are they ready for the reveal?
I sure hope so, Pat, because we had some incredible illustrations of guesses that were sent in to us, and I mean 10 out of 10 for the effort and the imagination put into those drawings. I feel like I hope that the reveal of the balloon worm is as exciting as some of those
we will see, but
illustrations.
Kasie and Kyle, we teased this balloon worm, and this is one of those animals that we currently have at the aquarium. Now, again, we just want to let everybody know that these animals will be moving in and out of being in our care. There's a lot of research and discovery that is still ongoing about the husbandry of these organisms. So this is an animal that we currently have with us, that the water that Kasie and Kyle have set up is currently taken care of, and we're likely to have these when we open. But just in case we don't, eventually at some point. But here we go. Let's reveal that balloon worm. Are you ready, Kasie, Kyle, with your blessing?
Let's see it.
All right. Here, and shout out to Vampire Squid on Discord who guessed it correctly. Right there next to you on that side of the screen, we have one of those balloon worms. Now, that is a common name that we have come up with at the aquarium. There's going to be a lot of those where it might be very difficult for you folks to Google these particular animals because some of them just don't have common names yet. Some of them don't have scientific names, and that'll be something that we're working on. But in case you're wondering, that is what the balloon worm looks like. Shout out to everybody who had their guesses. I've never pronounced this word before, so we're going to see. But the name of this worm is Poiobius species. Poeobius is the balloon worm there on the side. It is a segmented worm, and we're very, very excited to potentially show you all of that. But so shout out to everybody who guessed the balloon worm. The reveal is now over, and I'd like to kick it back to Kasie and Kyle. Just if you could tell us a little bit about the excitement that maybe you have of all of these systems finally coming together to have an animal like the balloon worm, like bloody belly comb jellies or deep sea isopods that we talked about on the last stream. What's it like to finally get to see critters in that water that you've been engineering for many years, that you've been conceptualizing?
It's honestly a little surreal, or a lot surreal. We've been spending so much time working on just the fine details and tiny little parameters. Is the pH this or that being able to look at the big picture now and step back and say, wow, we're going to be able to tell this story about these animals and this environment that nobody gets to see, that we don't get to see on a regular basis, that our partners in MBARI get to see all the time through ROV research and the research that they are doing. It's really, really exciting to start seeing the exhibit come together, because I'm not going to get too much into the water yet because I don't want to spoil the rest of the stream.
We can dive right in,
But
we can whet our appetite, as it were, if you'd like,
Pat,
We're about to make a splash, so whatever you feel like doing.
I'm just going to step. I mean, 3's a charm. You got another one in there?
Water. Okay.
Yes.
I tried.
What are you up to, Emily?
Perfect.
There you go. No, the story that we're telling, I always say that the water for the animals that are living in the ocean is just as important to them as the air that we breathe as humans and land breathing animals. So no story is complete in the deep ocean, or in any ocean, on the surface for that matter, without the story of the water behind it. And it's just been really exciting to be able to manipulate parameters and change chemistry and change gases and try to really match an environment that these animals can thrive in. We don't want to just display animals. We want them to thrive and be able to act natural and be able to have people see them the way that they're meant to be seen. So for me, it's become really surreal. I walked in the first time we put one of our animals on exhibit in the deep and actually teared up, and I didn't expect that. And that's
salt water meets salt water,
Salt water.
Yeah.
It wasn't salty enough. Kyle messed up the salinity. I had to add a little more with my with my tears.
That wasn't a parameter we talked about for this show.
So anyway, go ahead, Kyle. I don't know how you feel about it, but
yeah, all the same things, but also since I got to be a little bit more like on the technical side of things, like it works. And maybe that sounds trite, but there's not really anything else like this out there. And pretty much all the R&D for these systems and how to apply them in a public aquarium setting was all things we did in-house. So the notion that we could scale it up the way that we did, provide all this infrastructure for into the deep, and then actually be able to hit all of these kind of crazy targets for this really flexible deep sea water for our collection cruises. It's very satisfying from like that standpoint. But then, as Kasie said, when you go and you actually walk through the exhibits, to know that the water that we helped create is actually facilitating all of these extremely, unviewed animals, so to speak. It's really cool. It kind of bridges that gap between me on the technical side and all of the husbandry folks that are usually on here talking. They get to work with these amazing creatures every day. So definitely humbling.
Oh, that's very cool.
The flexibility that Kyle mentioned, if I can jump in and describe that. What's really interesting about this show is that we want to be able to display animals that maybe we don't know we're going to catch yet, or we haven't seen yet. And we have such an expanse out there of unknown animals and unknown environments that one of our goals for the show and one of the Animal Care's goals was to be able to be flexible in our exhibits to make the water right for a variety of species. So not just one that we might display for 5, 6, 7 years, but have an exhibit that could change. So every time you come back, it might be a little bit different because there might be another animal or another species that might actually need different water. And so it sounds like a simple thing, but the flexibility that Kyle alluded to is the fact that we created systems to be able to change oxygen levels, to be able to change pH values, to be able to change temperatures, depending on what we get back from our MBARI cruises every time. That was a really crucial part of this build.
That's fascinating. The idea that you're trying to come up with a menu of the environment for animals that we might even be discovering or that we don't really know, and that can come from so many different parts of the ocean that are so different. We talked on the last stream about things called oxygen minimum zones. We also know that down on the deep sea floor is where the coldest water is because of the physics of that. So you just have such an interesting, you have to get ready for all these different special requests and like, can I get that on the side, for some of these animals? That's really,
there are a lot of sides, surprising number of sides.
Overwhelming number of sides.
French fries and onion rings and
right, some mac and cheese, kale salad. Yeah, exactly.
Japanese kale salad. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, how do you create an environment or an aquarium for an animal that you don't know what that animal is yet? Right. So that's basically how we approached it. Like, how do we make this work if we don't know what we're going to put in it a year? So it's a really fun challenge.
Boy, wow. Yeah. Emily, we've been streaming now for a few minutes, and I know that we've got some folks that are tuning in from all around the world, people that are counting the puns. We appreciate all of you out there for doing that as well. But I know that some folks probably have some questions right now, Emily, before we transition into a little bit of a slideshow, a little bit of, we've got some cool behind the scenes photos that Kasie and Kyle have prepared for us. We're going to talk a little bit deeper about the science of water quality, talk about some of the physical structures that we've built. But Emily, before we get there, what do the folks want to know?
I have to say, I'm very impressed by all of the questions that have come in already. If people have been seeing me like staring off to the side of the screen, it's because I've been trying to collect all of them, and I already have over a full Google Doc page of questions that have come in the last like 10 minutes. So the very first question that we got though was, how are you guys doing? Are you feeling okay with the exhibit coming up? Like, how
Quick little vibe check. How you doing?
The stress level right now?
Yeah. I'm going to say again.
There's the public answer, and then there's the true feeling. We don't have to reveal anything. A lot of work, I imagine, right?
It's been a lot, and this is a huge effort. I mean, this is the most complicated show that I think the aquarium has ever done in its history, not only on the life support side, but on the types of animals we're displaying, what it takes to collect them, the amazing exhibits graphics that are being developed in there. So it has been crunch time for a little while, especially the last few months for our team. At least the last few months have probably been the biggest pressure cooker. No pun intended.
Well, I was going to say,
I did that one by accident.
Just like many of the animals that we have on exhibit, you are all very graceful under pressure. We should point that out. Yes.
So it's been really good to see it come together, and I've been really impressed with like you said, the grace of the team. And there's a lot of different groups working together, a lot of different personalities, a lot of different ideas on how things should be done. And it's really been a really neat team effort. And we're finally starting to see it all come together right now. Hearing you say it's a month away, got my heart rate a little up again. Yep. So thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Fitbit, no, that Fitbit's got to earn its stripes, you know. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. Again, everything works. And since it's such a dynamic system, you know, now that we're starting to introduce some animals, we get to see how these systems actually behave, how well they respond. You know, we get to spy on the aquarius a little bit and see when they're getting into the tanks and doing some feeding and maintenance. I can check that out from afar just by following the trends on these systems.
That's excellent.
Speaking of that, we did have a couple of questions come in. What are some of those parameters that you are tracking in the water in all of these new exhibits that we are building for Into the Deep, and how often are you actually checking those things like pH and nitrates and everything?
And with that, I want to transition our visuals over to some of those areas that you're going to be working in. So get ready, everybody. Here's the reveal of just one portion of the behind the scenes of this exhibit. You are about to see some incredible plumbing going on here. So let's see it right there. Once everybody's able to see that up on the stream. To Emily's question, what are you monitoring? Look at all of those gadgets and gizmos, pipes and doohickeys going on there in the back. What's going on there?
That is our mechanical spaghetti, as we call it. And actually, Kyle, I think this might be a good time. I was going to ask you to give why don't you just give an overview of what we're doing back there? I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. Let's tell people exactly what we're controlling for, how you're doing it.
Yeah. So from my end, I'd say there's maybe like 3 important parameters. We care about lots of things, but there's 3 kind of really important ones for this show. So we've got temperature that we'll need to control, we'll need to keep cold. We've got dissolved oxygen that we'll need to keep below to kind of simulate some of these deep sea habitats. And we've got pH that we'll also need to keep a little bit lower than we would kind of at surface water. So I apologize, I don't have a picture of this piping pulled up on my screen.
It's the whole service area of Service Area 1.
Service Area 1,
the whole thing.
Gotcha.
And I can go through just a few different images in the background as well, and you can just kind of describe generally, and then Kasie can let me know if I'm showing something completely off. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. This is my first live stream with everybody, so bear with me as I
you're great.
Learn.
You're looking good. You're in your little porthole. You're surrounded by a lot of systems that require your attention. Again, we're talking about maybe that menu. This is your kitchen where you're starting to get something set up. Your sous chefs are in there prepping all these little ingredients.
Yeah, so I think I've got it pulled up now. We'll see if it makes sense when I start talking about it. So in general, these behind the scenes service areas are really similar to a lot of the other ones that we have in our aquarium. We have an exhibit tank that you get to see from the public side, but then behind the scenes, we've got a reservoir where we do all of our local life support to maintain water quality to keep all of our animals very happy. So that's kind of what this white box is over here. We have a smattering of pumps that are going to pull off of that and feed water into those blue heat exchangers. That's going to do all of our tempering. We can hit a lot of intermediate temperatures, anywhere from 40 degrees up into the low 70s. And in addition to that, we have pumps that are going to send water to the exhibits into some spray bars that the aquarius made to get really specific types of flow where they need it. And then lastly, and we'll get into this more later, we have a pump that is kind of like the workhorse for this show specifically. And this guy is going to pump through some different equipment that we'll talk about to actually do the oxygen stripping and help facilitate the pH control. So it's very, very important. A lot of complexity. As you can see, this room is just full of pipes. And I know what most of them are, but we need all of that complexity because of what we're trying to do and to be able to build in the kind of redundancy that Kasie talked about earlier. We want redundancy and flexibility because we don't know, what we're going to find in the ocean and what people want to see. And we want to make sure that we can provide really robust conditions to house those as best we can.
And yeah, so I think you actually went pretty well along with the pictures. You couldn't see Kyle, so it worked out really well. Good job, Pat. Sorry, I can hear my dogs in the background, so apologies, Maddie and Nora.
No, it's all good. No, we're very, for those of you who watch aquarium live streams, you're very familiar with our various home pups. We got Trooper sleeping behind Emily right now. We've got, the dogs are getting very excited for this exhibit. We happened to mention
Trooper
Bones
Cam.
previously. Yeah, we got Trooper Cam up right now. We happened to mention Bones on the last stream, and we apologize. Very similar to calling out Alexa's name. It can cause some problems at a distance, but yeah, no bones about it. This particular stream here, you got a lot of folks interested in the background that are of the canine variety. I
Perfect.
imagine. Yeah.
Well, I see in the chat that I just got a note from our water quality team. Speaking of all these parameters that got asked about, Emily, I can speak to that. They just ran today's chemistry in the deep, and the water's looking good. So thanks for that, team water quality.
Right on. Everybody, let's get some W's in the chat.
The Twitch chat.
Yep.
Yeah.
W's in the chat for team water quality.
In terms of the parameters we're looking at, what Kyle's really working on there is, we mentioned the last stream with Paul, and you mentioned earlier, Pat, that we have the oxygen minimum zone, the OMZ, and part of what we're trying to recreate in these exhibits is the environment that allows those animals that live in these really, really low oxygen environments to be able to thrive in the aquarium. And that's really what's allowing us to display animals that have never been seen before. And in the past, I don't want to discredit, there have been many deep sea shows before. We've learned a lot from our colleagues in Japan and overseas on what's been happening. People have just made low oxygen displays before. So that in itself is not a new concept. What makes this different and what we're really proud of and excited about and glad, as Kyle says, that it actually works, because that's always a good thing, is that we tried it differently. So instead of in the past where people used to bubble nitrogen into the water to actually push the oxygen out of the water, which is a way to do it, you push more nitrogen into seawater, pushes the oxygen out, you have less oxygen. And that's great. And that works really well for some animals. Not so great for animals like jellies and gelatinous critters because of this thing called microbubbles. So when you push more gas into the fluid, you're going to get tiny, tiny, teeny, tiny bubbles. That's not great for some animals, especially for jellies. They can get trapped in their bells, cause floating issues. It can cause issues with their tissue. So we were trying to avoid that. So what we did, and I'm not going to get too much into the tech on this quite yet, because Kyle's got some great visuals to explain it, and he's the one working with it. But we wanted to be able to pull the oxygen out instead of push it out with more gas being added to the water. So the oxygen, I'll pause on that so that we can get into the tech a little later, but the oxygen is one parameter we're looking at. As Kyle mentioned, we're also concerned about the pH because in those areas of the deep ocean, it's actually a little more acidic. So a lower pH than you would see at the surface. So that's an interesting conundrum when you get into how we designed our technology. and Kyle explained that in a little bit too, but we actually had to lower the pH a little bit too. So we're controlling those two in tandem and they are related. And then the temperature, we wanted some temperature flexibility. So we wanted to be able to go from 40 degrees, sometimes maybe even lower, but I'm not sure if that's a side we'll be able to serve with this particular salad. And then we'll get, be able to stretch up to 70 degrees if we were to need that. So, and then the nutrients is the other piece. I heard a question about nitrates that you mentioned, Emily. We obviously we do in all of our exhibits, and including the deep, we're going to manage and monitor the nutrients. So team water quality in the laboratory tests for ammonia, for nitrites, for nitrates, for magnesium and calcium, especially for coral exhibits, because those are very important elements for corals. What else we got? Yeah, I think those are our main ones. There's a few phosphates, there are a few other peripheral ones, but those are like the main aquarium things that we want to monitor and make sure we keep in balance. Luckily in the deep sea, it's so cold that we don't actually see a lot of these nutrients that we might see in more tropical exhibits. So that piece is less difficult than what Kyle and team are doing with the oxygen pH.
That's fascinating, and we will talk a little bit more about that specific chemistry and the physics involved. We have actually some classic scientific diagrams that I can get ready to pull up here in just a second. But Emily, what might be some questions that folks have had related to what's been talked about so far? We saw a little bit of the various instruments, the pots and pans making this menu for the water there, of the heat exchangers, the pipes, all that. What else are the folks wondering?
Yeah, I love this. It's kind of a follow-up question to everything that you are all saying. How do we actually know what the right levels of those different things are for all of our animals? The temperature, the pH, the oxygen level. How do we know that that's what we need to recreate at the aquarium?
Excellent question. And a lot of that relies on our partnership with our sister institution up at MBARI. So what we have is this incredible connection to researchers who are constantly studying the deep sea right off of our coast in the Monterey Canyon. In the bay itself, we have this deep sea environment. So a lot of this we know from them. We've got a lot of studies on where these specific animals live, what the water looks like around it. We've actually, from the aquarium, actually sent down our own instrumentation with the ROVs as well. When we are collecting animals, we are sending instrumentation down to measure total dissolved gas values, to measure oxygen levels, to measure pH, so that we know exactly if a specific animal was collected here, the pH was this, the gas levels were this, the oxygen level was this. So that's been helpful too. But I will say a lot of it is on the go research from our husbandry team and from MBARI, learning as we go, like putting the animals in the environment, learning how they feed, learning what they adapt to, what pHs work best for them. And so that's what the last 6 to 10 years have been about, honestly, is creating those systems and figuring out how to do it best.
Kyle, anything to add there?
Yeah, just that, some of these creatures do migrate up and down the water column. And so the conditions that they're collected at might not be representative of what they're going to do the best at. I just kind of wanted to get at that idea of all of the R&D that husbandry is doing and the need for these flexible systems. We might have caught that one particular gelatinous animal that had wanderlust and wandered way out of, away from home. But we want to make sure that we can dial things in just as they need to be.
Yeah, I guess I'm no deep sea biologist, but my understanding is that if you happen to find a jelly going by, it's got a little guitar case with some stickers on it, maybe that one's more of a vagabond, less representative of the traditional range, I would imagine.
That's a very scientific assessment. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you heard it here first.
We welcome those jellies here.
Exactly. Well, great stuff. Well, okay, so before we hop into some more audience questions, I just want to make sure that we get to these ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all of us down to the lower left, and now I'm going to pull up some of those membranes there, Kyle, if you wanted to talk a little bit about what those are looking like. Yes, I think I nailed it right here. Yeah, I'll just move this over.
The heart of our...
I'll move this over just a little bit right there. And okay, with that, Kyle, if you want to take it away, if you want to let us know a little bit about what it is that we are looking at here in this particular diagram. I've got gas out in a vacuum, gas in with nitrogen, water in, water out, then some funky little arrows going by. What are we looking at?
Thank you, Pat. The cues are awesome. So this is a schematic of one of our gas transfer membranes. And so what these are just a membrane, which can separate some things from it. In this case, we've chosen a particular type of membrane, which separates gases. So the idea is that we send our filtered seawater in through the left, and it kind of goes into this membrane, spreads out around all these little tiny hollow fiber tubes, which you can kind of picture as really, really tiny drinking straws. Spreads out, goes around the outside of all these tubes, comes out the other side with less gas than it started with. To actually facilitate that gas removal, we can pull gas out using a vacuum and assist in that process by using nitrogen.
Sweet. Yeah, excellent. And then what if I show this second schematic that popped up for a quick second, where we've got seawater on one side, vacuum on the other, high gas pressure on the left, dissolved oxygen, gas transfer membranes, and low gas pressure, all in that little neat diagram.
Yeah, thank you. So all of those little tiny straw-like things that I were talking about, was talking about, they are all individual membranes. So these membranes that I'm talking about, we have one on the wall, but really it's comprised of thousands and thousands of these little tiny hollow fiber tube membranes. We need all of that surface area so that we can have really good gas transfer. So what this schematic is kind of getting at is if you look at the seawater on the left, it's got all of this dissolved gas in it, including oxygen. Our seawater is in contact with one of these gas transfer membranes. And then if we want to move that dissolved oxygen out of our seawater, we need some kind of driving force to do it. So gases are kind of similar to water in that they're fluids and that they will move from regions of high pressure to regions of low pressure. So we can create a low gas pressure environment for all that oxygen to move to with a vacuum. So once we do that, as we're starting to flow seawater through one side of the membrane and pull a vacuum on the other, now there's some incentive for those oxygen molecules to kind of like go across, right? It's like moving out of California and going back home to Iowa, where the real estate is super cheap. There's some incentive to do that. It doesn't mean that you will. Maybe you have a nice job at the aquarium, but there is incentive to do that. And so as we basically strip out all this oxygen over time, we get lower and lower concentrations of dissolved gases in our seawater.
That's awesome. So if I was to redesign this particular graphic, California on the left, Iowa, home state on the right. Yeah, it's really fascinating. Just this idea that these molecules, they very much like high pressure systems you folks might be familiar with the weather, high pressure, low pressure, wind flows from high to low. So we're kind of creating a wind of oxygen going from one side to the other. And this takes a lot of energy, I imagine, to do. This isn't something that happens kind of naturally in the ocean, as it were, right?
Right. In natural systems, we're kind of relying on. I'm gonna get nerdy for a second here.
Please do.
Like
wait, this wasn't nerdy enough.
Right,
now,
please. We told people this is science.
For this.
Go for it.
So we kind of have like two ideas in some of the sciences. You've got thermodynamics, which is telling you where a system is going to end up, and then you have kinetics, which is telling you how the system is going to get there, how quickly it's going to get there. So I'm actually looking out at the ocean right now, and I know that oxygen from the atmosphere can dissolve into water, and it can dissolve into the ocean and be carried down. But that diffusion at the surface is pretty limited. We know that the bottom of the ocean is a really long way from the surface. And so for a little tiny atom or molecule to go all the way from the surface to the bottom just on its own with no external force is going to be really difficult. If we do something like introduce ocean currents, we can start to kind of pull more oxygen from the surface, drive it down, things like that. So what I'm getting at is in these membranes, there's a couple of different ways that we could actually do it. If we just relied on natural processes, it's going to be really slow. Diffusion is typically a slow process in the absence of external factors. So that's in part why there's so many membranes inside of those housings. It gives you tons and tons and tons of surface area for this to actually happen. So even though diffusion is slow, it's happening over such a gigantic area that you don't necessarily think about it. Additionally, we kind of like help drive that process by applying a vacuum to increase that pressure differential. And then we can kind of want to say like cheat a little bit, but it's help
up, down, down, right?
Yeah.
Konami coded.
Yeah, exactly. It's like putting in a cheat code in a video game. Instead of using vacuum alone, which will only get you so far, that's what thermodynamics tells you, you can add in some nitrogen and change that process. So you add in little bursts of nitrogen, and those molecules are going to collide with oxygen on the gas side of our membrane, and it's going to push them away. So at the surface of the membrane, it doesn't know that there's all this oxygen there anymore. It's all been swept away. So we can actually speed up the kinetics of this by adding nitrogen. So what we end up getting is a much faster responsive process. It's not super energy intensive, and we have a lot of control over what we're actually doing, unlike, for instance, bubbling in nitrogen.
Which is great because jellies don't want to wait for their low oxygen. It's not.
No, that is all very fascinating, and I just want to shout out anybody in the chat who not only really appreciated that, but also anybody who happens to remember those exact type of diagrams from their chemistry or physics courses. We've got a lot of folks out there that might be remembering points gained or lost in the particular explanation. So thank you, Kyle, for that great explanation. Emily, how did everybody respond to the hardcore science section? I believe in our followers. I believe they had a great time.
No, we're loving it. So many people are very excited about it. Someone just said, love it, really cool. I'm a science nerd myself. So yeah, we hit our target audience, everyone. Yes.
Excellent.
A lot of questions coming. That was an awesome explanation of how we're controlling the oxygen levels in it, which prompted a lot of questions about how are we then controlling all of the other factors in the water, like the pH and the nitrates and everything that we were talking about before.
Take a pH, Kyle. Go for it.
Yeah. So I've talked kind of vaguely about this. Back up real quick. So when we're controlling for oxygen, like I said, we get so far with vacuum, and then if we add in nitrogen, we can do better. All these systems are naturally going to pull in some ambient air just because, we have to have little leaks here and there. The aquarists have to get in there and sample. So we'll take in some oxygen and then we can remove it. We can take in some oxygen and we can remove it. This is a process that we've automated for us. These membranes, because they're so small, they'll also remove other gases from our seawater, including carbon dioxide. So you might remember from chemistry classes, carbon dioxide can dissolve into seawater and create these buffering reactions that affects the pH as they start to kick off hydrogen ions. So over time, as we run these systems, our pH will trend up a little bit as these gas transfer membranes remove carbon dioxide from our system. When that happens, we can inject a little bit of carbon dioxide back in. I'm talking super tiny amounts here. We use about, what I would breathe out over the course of 2 days. That's what we use throughout the entire day to sustain the exhibit. Minuscule amounts of CO2 in the water. It's very soluble. Anyway, we can control the CO2.
So are you bottling the breath collectively of team water quality to be able to just, sustainably, it's like almost like a hydroponic system at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what happens when you're salaried. You're never off the clock.
There you go. Yeah,
you just
put that directly into the...
We send Kyle home with a bag and a tube while he sleeps. It's just like a mask over. But you bring up a good point. So there are ways to actually create CO2, and we could have, like with nitrogen, we are actually generating nitrogen for the system, pulling in air and using machines to create the nitrogen that we use. For CO2, we didn't really want to do that, even though that's possible. So we are using bottled CO2 that's coming from, there are companies that actually collect the CO2 from industrial processes that off-gas the CO2. They will recapture it and then they will resell it for purposes like this. So we're using sustainable, thank you, Kyle, appreciate it. Sustainable CO2, if there's such a thing, but that is the way we're doing it. We're making sure we use carbon dioxide that's sourced from industrial processes, giving it kind of a second chance at life before it goes back out into the atmosphere, as opposed to creating more just for the show. So.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Emily, with a few questions there, and then the next thing that I'd like to do with Kasie and Kyle is go through some of the photos that you've provided to us of various systems, various other staff that are not here live with us, that are actually down working in the actual exhibit space right now, getting everything prepped. So we'll go to some quick audience questions, and then next thing, if Kasie or Kyle, you want to run me through some of those images that you provided, we can talk a little bit about the install and everything that is actually physically in that space. But Emily, what do the folks want to know?
Yeah, Kyle mentioned salaried. You're always on the clock for the aquarium, right? So does that mean that we're on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, monitoring all of these different things?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much complexity with the aquarium in general. It's hard to like cherry pick what to talk about. A lot of things, the water quality lab will test and monitor for, but a lot of things we can actually trend in real time. And so pH, temperature, and DO are things that we're collecting 24/7, sending that data to a server, and then we can view it anytime. So for myself, for instance, I'll get an alarm in the middle of the night, and I got a whole bunch, during startup for this show, maybe the pH was too high, maybe the DO was too low. And so we can actually monitor these things in real time and keep an eye on them.
And there are staff on site 24/7 that if Kyle gets an alarm in the middle of the night, it's not like he has to always hop in his car and run down there. He gets on the radio or the cell phone and talks to our operators who are there monitoring the system. But yeah, we have an amazing team of controls engineers who have actually programmed and connected all of these controls so that we can monitor over 3,000 continuous data points right now just for Into the Deep.
Wow.
On a daily basis is streaming through to the people who need to see them. So that's how we keep track of every little piece that we need to for this to work.
That's great.
Amazing.
Yeah. If we haven't done it yet, I mean, shout out to all the systems engineers, everybody in control, the security team that's there 24/7. Talk about folks that are really dedicated and behind the scenes. Thank you to everybody who's out there making sure that the full system is taken care of there. With that, and one note is that Team Water Quality was over on Twitch asking or saying that we should not forget to talk about all the metal testing that we can do in a second there. So we won't forget the metal testing. But what I will do right now is I'm going to move us down to the lower left of the screen, and then if anybody just wants to shout out one of the images that you want me to pull up here from our time, or I can pick one if you'd like. I've got.
Well, you can pick. I mean, we've talked about metals, so we could start there. We could end there. That's fine with.
All right, sounds good. So which one do you want me to bring up here?
Let's. Do you have a lab picture?
I do have a lab picture.
So we talked a lot about the engineering components, which there's more of because there's some really cool photos. I think there's one of Kyle in a cowboy hat that we have to show. So just put a flag on that.
Oh, here. Well, let me just put up right there. We've got
perfect.
The rest of some of our Team Water Quality.
There we go. There is Hannah and Chris, who are one of our two awesome Team Water Quality folks, two of our water quality specialists that are right there in the picture you're seeing, testing some of our, I think they're going to be testing ammonia and nitrites potentially in that, or running a standard curve. So these are two of our amazing staff who take daily water samples of not only Into the Deep, but all across the aquarium, make sure all of our ammonia, nitrites, phosphates, calcium, magnesium, medications we might be using in the water, temperature, DO. So there you go. Shout out to these guys. And that is in our brand new water quality or water science lab that we just opened a month ago. So,
so I'm going to pull up that photo right here. This is the new wet lab photo there. So shout out to all y'all getting your systems set up there.
So this is our wet lab. It looked a little different during the original last 6 years of R&D for Into the Deep, but now we've got this set up, same space, but this is where a lot of the magic happened for figuring out these large scale exhibits or large scale systems that Kyle's been describing. There are some staff that spent hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm thinking of Eric Kingsley in particular, data manager, who is in there tweaking all the beginnings of how do we do oxygen? How do we do nitrogen? And we spent a lot of time in there. And this is our main lab. So this, I think this is the first unveiling of our new water science lab.
Hey.
So, woo! There you go. It's so pretty. It's so sleek. And this is before we got all our instruments moved in. So so we just the water quality lab was due for an upgrade anyway. It had been a long time. There was an old research lab, and Bari used to even work in there. We were transitioning more to this fancy chemistry that we have to do for things like Into the Deep. So we timed this remodel of this lab to actually coincide with the opening of the deep, so we could be able to introduce a lot more water capabilities that we would need for these animals. So that's an awesome picture of the new space.
And Kasie, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the folks are looking out the window, that would be the top of the kelp forest exhibit. Is that correct?
Yep. So the kelp forest out that window is right there. So if you come into from the public side, and there's a little opening on the cage where you can walk outside and look out across the top of the kelp forest. If you look straight across, that's where our lab is.
Wonderful. Yeah. And then I've got this photo here that I wanted to show. Says that we've got wonderful Karen Tuttle doing some metals testing here.
Yes. Hi, Trooper. Trooper's excited for metals testing.
Trooper is very excited about metals testing.
Yes. So what Karen Tuttle, our water science lab manager there in the picture, is standing in front of is our new ICP OES, which I should ask this question in the chat, is also called inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectrometry.
Yeah.
How's that for nerdy, Kyle? We got you. Perfect. So one of the things we want to do is be able to measure the elements in the water. So this allows us to do that. We can measure right now, because we just got it set up, 25 individual elements. So we can look at, again, that calcium, that magnesium for the deep sea corals. We can look at metals, because metals can be very harmful to invertebrates. And it's fairly easy sometimes to get little bits of copper wire in there after a new build. You know, there's a lot of electrical work being done on the deep. So we like to be able to check for that before we put animals in and make sure that the water is perfect, optimal environment for them. So we're really excited to have this in-house. It's going to give us a lot of good capabilities for animal welfare and just for fun research projects.
That's fascinating.
Science.
And you sent this one in an email late last night of plasma. Here, I've got this shown in the middle of that screen. What can you tell us about that particular screenshot there from your workstation?
We have plasma. You know, husbandry operations in Paul might have otters and blood belly comb jellies, and they're cute and they're fun, but we've got plasma. So we have to show it. No, so this is basically the heart of how that machine works. And plasma is basically a fourth state of matter. You can think of it as simplified version, really, 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 really hot gas, like a step above gas. So what we're using is argon that is plumbed into this machine. It gets really, really excited, really, really hot, and it separates out the ions of each element, and they they produce electromagnetic radiation at wavelengths that are characteristic of a specific element. And we're able to tell what element is in the water at what concentration by using the argon plasma. We used to have to wait weeks to send these samples out to an outside lab. And I'm going to steal a Kyle pun right now. I'll give credit where credit's due. But now we're happy to report that our long days of waiting are gone.
Argon. Nice. Love it.
You can take all these puns and bury them.
I think that they're high water quality puns. I think that they are fantastic. Emily, so that was delightful. We've got a few more photos of some folks like Mike working on some of the systems we can get to. But Emily, that was a lot of really cool lab stuff. I know you were a chemistry major, correct? Right?
At one point in my life, I was a chemistry major. I worked in an analytical chemistry lab, so I'm all about.
That was
the chemistry nerding out here. So
that was chemistry core, like aesthetic for anybody out there for the lab there. But Emily,
I mean, you could say that you know, all the testing and stuff that they are doing with the ICP OES is a noble gas effort there. So
man, with these puns, we're definitely part of the solution.
The number
if not
of chemistry puns that I have.
I heard that, Pat.
Kasie and Kyle.
Sorry for my lack of reaction here.
Yeah. Sorry, the stream is breaking up. Oh no, we're just buffering. It's all good.
Oh my gosh, we could do this all day. Oh,
we could do this all day, but I do want to point out that we are just about 9 minutes away from concluding our hour with all of you. Incredible to be able to spend that time. Emily, any questions that we should get to now before maybe I'll just run through some of the other photos of some of the staff in place working with our systems.
Yeah, I will just quickly say because we've made it through about a quarter of the questions that have come in, that, you know, we're going to try and get to as many as we can. But if you still have questions afterwards, hop on over to our Discord channel or on any of our social pages, drop those questions in there, either as a direct message on Facebook, Instagram, etc. Twitch, you can drop us a whisper if you're curious, or hop on over to that Discord channel. We have our Discord server. We have an entire channel called Into the Deep. You can drop those questions in there and we will try and answer as many as we can. So definitely still trying to get to lots of them here. But we did have, you know, quite a few come in. We're going to answer a couple more right now. We had a couple of questions because folks know that some of the animals that we are going to have on display at the aquarium are vertical migrators. So they might live in different parts of the deep sea all the way up to the surface at different points in their day, at different points in their life. do we compensate for that inside of the exhibit? Do we change what the water is like for them throughout the day, or do we keep it kind of at an even keel for them?
Yeah, I'd say for the time being, we're just keeping them at an even keel. That being said, we do have the ability to kind of vary set points and things. Unfortunately, there's just so much more R&D with the animals themselves that needs to be done before, really kind of understanding what's important, and what those animals are going to respond best to on a daily basis. So I'd say that we have the capability to do it, and it's just going to be one of those questions that maybe the husbandry staff is able to answer throughout the life of the show.
Awesome.
That's excellent. I wanted to point out too that some folks are calling us basic, but in the best possible way right now for the added chemistry puns.
I don't know. I can be pretty acidic when the systems don't work.
Let's not get too salty about this.
Right. Ion know what's going on. So with that, Emily, one more question, and then we teased it, and I found it. I didn't know where it was, but we have to get to a photo of Kyle in a cowboy hat lassoing one of the filters here in just a second. So yes, what's the question that we've got?
We'll answer this one. We do have animals inside of our exhibits that would be feeding on marine snow, and we're hopefully going to have a more in-depth kind of conversation later on in a different live stream about that. But with these animals, where they're used to having continuous poop and dead stuff and everything fall through the water for them to feast on, how does that play in with our filtration systems? We can imagine that if we're recreating that kind of environment for them, that you'd have a lot of poop in there pretty quickly building up. So how do we deal with anything and any kind of dirty water inside of the exhibits?
Kyle, how do you feel about poop and fine silt?
At home, not great, but at the aquarium for my job, it's okay. I think in general, we have a very robust filtration system at the aquarium, and Into the Deep is kind of piggybacking off of that, off of our main cold system. So to help address some of these concerns, and especially, like with R&D for animals where we're not sure what they eat, and as Paul said, throwing the whole kitchen sink at them, we have a lot of local filtration to kind of help address that. So things like sand filters and bag filters coming back from the returns for some of these exhibits, so that we can actually physically catch and remove as much of that food as possible, and then just exhaust it out of the system entirely.
Very cool. All right. Okay. With that, I promised. Here it is. Kyle, what are you doing? What's up with the hat and the and the lasso?
This is how we open valves.
Okay.
I mean, it's very precision oriented.
He's just seahorsing around.
Yeah, I've talked a big game here with all the science and chemistry, but this is really how these shows are built and put online. For better or worse, I bought this cowboy hat. It's a hard hat. So during the 8 months of construction or so for this exhibit, I wore that around, and I was the cowboy. I'm from Iowa, so it only makes sense that I should wear a cowboy hat, right? And to be honest, I expected to get a lot more flack for it than I did. I'm not sure if people took me seriously, but they at least know who I was. So,
but when you've got that cowboy hat, you're really making sure that our deep sea Gorgonians and sea fans, that they have an okay coral going on there.
Don't do it.
I just did, Kasie. You saw where that was headed.
So yeah, if one of our listeners could, Photoshop me, riding a seahorse or something like that.
Oh, do it. Discord.
We were trying to figure out what the next Discord challenge was going to be. All right, if anybody on Discord or anybody who's watching us right now, Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube as well, take a screenshot right now. See if you can Photoshop our dear friend Kyle here onto a seahorse or anything else that might need lassoing, and we'll preview some of our favorites on the next stream. Head over to Discord to share those, or send us that DM, or you can tweet at us as well if you wanted to. That's delightful.
I love it. And he is standing, to be fair, he is standing in front of a row of those membranes that we were talking about. So inside of each of those black tubes that he's lassoing are all those tiny little straws that were the magic of taking the oxygen out. is happening. So we're cowboys of the deep on a seahorse. I'm going to stop.
And so now I just wanted to show a few of the other staff here. Oh, yeah, here we go. So what can you tell us about this gentleman and how excited he is about this control panel that we've got?
That is our wonderful controls engineer, Anshu, who has spent, I can't even count now how many hours at 3 a.m. over the last 6 months to a year, programming, building all of our controls, wiring controls. He's pointing at one of the touch screen panels that he programmed and built so that we can just go up and use a fancy touchscreen to change parameters. But behind that is all of On's work in Michael Brigham as well, who have spent so much time making sure that we can monitor those 3,000 data points constantly. So big shout out to On.
Speaking of Mike, there he is right now, giving us a little bit of attitude around.
Oh my gosh, Mike is always giving us attitude. I see that face all the time. So he's actually on our back deck where our chillers to chill all this water are actually situated out on the back deck of the aquarium. There's a photo there of Mike again looking at some of the electronics. So he spent a lot of time programming and making sure that we can fine tune the temperature control as well. It's an interesting place for chillers to sit. Yes, we're aware. If you were a mechanical engineer, you're probably going, what? So there are some challenges we've had to address with that. That was literally the best place to put them, believe it or not. We spent a lot of time making sure that we've acoustically isolated them since when this picture was taken, so we don't affect the environment outside, and that they work properly. So that's Mike.
Very cool, sis. And then last photo here, we've got Brian currently standing here overlooking some more water babies.
Water babies. Yes, there's Brian Maurer adjusting some of the parameters on the system. So he's been super involved. He's our life support manager at the aquarium, and he's been super involved from day one of the design of the system. So major shout out to Brian and his whole team that's keeping everything running and functioning. Kyle is one of them. So the design that went into this, it's just, like I said, I feel dumb every day and really fortunate to work with all of these folks. But there's a whole team, we can't even show them all, that have been so involved with this, and that's been so incredible for the show. Just the amount of different types of science and passions and people that have been able to go into it. It's been really inspiring, and we are so excited for you to see it.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, Emily, I'm looking at the time. It's currently 2:00. We have spent just a delightful hour already hanging out with Team Water Quality of Kasie and Kyle here, answering some of your questions. We know that there are many, many more out there. And again, Kasie, Kyle, maybe we can get you set up on the Discord there if you want to go and answer some of those questions in person. But right now, we typically do a few things towards the end if you have a little bit of time. Emily has a bunch of different questions in front of her. I don't know what our ability to do rapid fire might be, but we usually try a little rapid fire round, some quick little answers, and we typically wrap up with some classic questions there. But Emily, do we have a rapid fire potential?
We do have some rapid fire potential
All right,
here, as long as Kasie and Kyle are up for it.
We're up for it. Are you telling us to talk less? Got it.
No. What we're trying to do is give ourselves less work at the end of this live stream answering everybody's questions. We're just going to give them the skinny.
All right. Question 1, rapid fire. Have we ever not pumped in water from the bay?
That's a good question. And you could take that a couple ways. So this should be rapid fire, but to
what are you doing with nuance right now?
I'm sorry.
Pick a side.
Okay.
No.
In the history of the aquarium, no. The aquarium was designed to be able to take water in from the bay. We are able to recirculate if we need to in instances where maybe we couldn't take water in. So we can do that. But no, the whole time the aquarium has been designed to be able to use water from the bay. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
All right. Top of your head. How quickly does water flow through the aquarium?
1,500 to 2,000 gallons per minute every day, constantly.
Every minute of every day.
And it varies. So don't quote me on that. I know people are watching going, well, right now somebody's looking on the computer. It's 1,495, Kasie. I see you.
What do we do with the water that's heading back out into the bay?
Al, you want to take one?
Yeah, we make sure that we clean it up and send it back back cleaner than we did before. So we filter it, we sterilize it, we temper it, and then send it back out where it belongs.
Yeah, for the folks wondering, if you've ever been to the Monterey Bay Aquarium back deck at low tide, why our tide pool is still filled with water, and that's because that's part of the outflow for the water back out into the bay. So that's why our tide pool is always full.
I particularly loved this one as a chemist. What's your favorite element?
Oh, does it change periodically?
Yeah, that. Can I steal that?
That's the non.
We can always table this question for later.
I have always liked argon, and I don't know why, just because it's so inert or what, but there's just, it's got a cool spelling. Sure, we'll go
Kyle?
with that.
Yeah, I have to say selenium, which is weird, but I made solar cells in grad school, and there were a lot of challenges associated with selenium, and so I spent many nights dreaming about why those things didn't work right. So it will forever have a home in my brain.
Didn't know you dreamt of selenium. Excellent.
Right. On this particular stream, selenium.
Selenium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emily, you have to do it too
Yes.
as the chemist.
I mean, I'm gonna be basic because I'm a chemist, but I'm also an ecologist, and so I love carbon because
Aww.
that's life, baby.
Talk about an
So,
organic answer. Well done.
I know.
Pat, you don't get away from this just because you're doing all the puns.
Oh man. I'm gonna be hydrogen.
There you go.
Gotta love it, 2 to every oxygen gives you the water. I don't know. Just like a nice
None of
little
us
high five.
air breathers
Positive guy.
appreciated oxygen right
Exactly.
now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh no.
We've just been trying to remove it for.
Yeah, 2 atoms run into each other. One of them says, "Oh no, I think I lost an electron. Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm positive." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. More
right.
rapid fire, and then we'll get to some sign offs.
I don't know if this is quite a rapid fire question, but we talked last stream with Paul about how we didn't need to replicate the pressure inside of the exhibit for the animals that we're hosting up there. Are there any other chemistry elements, water chemistry elements that we didn't need to recreate for our new aquatic friends?
Good question. One thing that comes to mind is, we talk a lot about gas pressures in gas themselves. One thing we did manipulate here is the total gas pressure, which I won't go down that rabbit hole. That's a whole other piece, but it's something we're always talking about in aquariums and in our research out in the field. So we did manipulate, in order to get the low oxygen, we did manipulate the total gas pressure down a little more than it would be naturally in the environment. And that's something that's on our radar to take a closer look at, like what the full pressure influences might be, not in terms of the pressure of deep versus shallow that we talk about with fish bladders or swim bladders and that sort of thing. But, what are those further influences happening? And right now, it doesn't seem like we need to worry about that or manipulate it more. But it's one thing that I'd like to know more about.
Yeah, in a similar vein, we would expect some differences in like mineral concentrations at the surface versus the deep sea. I know one thing that was talked about at one point was adding in deep sea rocks, which contain manganese to try and match elemental conditions that we might find at the bottom of the sea. Now we have the capacity to actually test what some of those kind of mineral and trace metal concentrations would be. Will we match them in the future? Debatable, but at least now we can see what those are and get a feel for it.
Shout out manganese, by the way. Some
Manganese.
some people's favorite element, I'm sure, watching.
And also, not only just chemistry on that note, but the microbiology of the deep sea we're really interested in exploring more. So we have a microbiology lab and a senior microbiologist on staff as well, who's really wanting to dig into what the differences might be in some of the symbiotic bacteria that might be assisting some of these animals living in the benthic environments, or some of the viruses that are really important. It sounds like a scary word, especially nowadays, but some of that ecosystem is really important with some of the bacteria and viruses down there. So
Fascinating stuff. All right.
All right. I've got one more rapid fire question,
Yep.
and then we'll hop to like our normal wrapping up question, Pat?
Yeah,
Does that work?
our classic sign off. Yeah, we had some folks.
All
We had some folks in industry or that are studying this kind of thing that I'm sure are very interested in your answer to our final wrap up question. Yeah.
Yeah. But first, the last rapid fire question. We're bringing in the seawater raw into the aquarium. That means that we get a lot of organisms that settle out into the pipes. Which one is your least favorite animal that encrusts our pipes before we have to clean them out?
Go ahead, Kyle. You take it first.
You better be careful which phylum you're about to.
This is hard.
Yeah. The operators are going to hang me out to dry because they're the lucky guys and women that actually get to clean the inside of these pipes out and have a far better understanding of what's in there than I do. But just from the images that I've seen, I think like all the barnacles and all the gooseneck barnacles that are in there,
okay,
those blow me away that they could actually be in there with their
it's
I'm
like
not a biologist.
24/7 buffet
outside part.
Yes. Buffet.
Yeah, their legs kicking into the current, grabbing all of that food. It's a perfect spot for a barnacle.
Yeah. And mussels. Those mussels get in there and just cake the insides of those pipes. So they have to constantly get in there and clean them out with big forceful pigs, we call them. They get pushed through the pipes to clean them all out. So yeah.
I'm sorry, Kyle, was that a Bob Ross mug just there? Just
Oh, you can't see it. It sure is.
Yeah, okay, sure is.
He paints the mug when you put hot liquids into it.
Oh, that's delightful. Just a nice little tree friend over here. No mistakes. Happy accidents.
Easter egg for the stream today.
Delightful. No, I saw you lift that up all slow and I was just like, oh, interesting. Yeah, we got some water in there. Cool. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the mussels, the barnacles, and the pipe. I mean, the mussels really that's how you know that we've got the strongest pipes out there. It's just the barnacles never skipping leg day. Emily.
Yes.
We have so many folks that have been watching, and we have had multiple hundreds of people that have been watching this stream through the whole time. I know a lot of folks are heading back out, so if you're watching the replay right now, there's a lot of students that are here, a lot of folks that are interested in this aspect of taking care of the animals at the aquarium. Final question for the two of them. Emily, go for it.
Yeah, we actually had these questions a couple of times come through. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into this field of water science and chemistry, and can you give a little bit of advice about how someone who might be interested in this could find a job like one that you two have?
Go ahead, Kyle.
All right, I'll give you some time to think.
I was trying to be nice, but thanks a lot.
No, I'd say so I've been working at the aquarium for about 4 years. I came from Iowa. So you can imagine it's about as far away from the ocean as you can get. When I was younger, I loved marine biology and thought that I was going to be that, but then I didn't think about it for a long time. So in some sense, I have a very non-traditional background, and I sort of stumbled into this very niche position, of which we only have one at the aquarium. But like as advice for anybody to get there, I'd say find something that you're really interested in. So for me, it was like math, science, chemistry. My formal background is in chemical engineering. So I got all of those skills, was trying to find my way, did some more like traditional kind of like heavy, lab-based research, and discovered that was just really not for me. And after coming out of that and thinking about the types of things that I wanted to do, working in a place where I get to see amazing animals all the time and do work that directly affects them while still getting to retain the things that I liked, math, science, chemistry, ended up just being like a really good fit. So I'd say, find the things that you like and start building those skills, find how you want to use them. And then really it's just kind of like getting your foot in the door, building some rapport with the hiring team, coming in, making a good impression, working on, public speaking skills, taking on live streams so that you can improve your public speaking skills so that, you can start those conversations. Start conversations. It's important.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing, Kasie.
Yeah, a lot of the same things resonate with Kyle, and I found with a lot of our team, actually. So I actually came from a biology background, studied fish brains in grad school, biology degree, and then studied fish neuroscience and neuropeptides in the brains of sex-changing fish, and loved it. And it was great fun. I hated chemistry in college, hated it, believe it or not. And so one thing I always tell to people is, just because you don't like something in school doesn't mean that it might not be something you really enjoy in a practical setting. So don't turn a blind eye to things that might interest you but might be hard, because you might find your way down 10 years from then working in a field where you really enjoy it. So I took kind of a windy road to get there. Really never wanted to work in physical science or water science specifically, but really enjoyed the interaction of the fish and the neuroscience with the water itself. And that's kind of what led me down that path. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized, similar to Kyle, I appreciate academia and it just wasn't the right environment for me. And I loved it and did it for a while, but really wanted to be in an applied science setting where I could say, okay, I want to solve this problem, pull from all these research, pull from all the various backgrounds that I've had throughout the years. And this job, and Monterey Bay Aquarium specifically, seems to capture a job that I didn't think existed that pulls from all of the things that I enjoy, has wonderful people. Yeah, so, and that's how I got here. But in terms of quote advice, it's just be flexible. If you see an opportunity that you think might be interesting, take it. You never know. It doesn't have to be your end all 30-year career, but it really could provide you with some really good background for a job that you may not even know exists yet. So.
Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, we have some other folks in Team Water Quality mentioning that some folks were studying octopus physiology and now doing water chemistry. So all sorts of backgrounds, and really just your passion for making sure that the systems behind the scenes are working. It's always very sexy to work with the animal itself. Always very cool to be the one who's in front of the camera sharing it like we are right now. But just thinking about the community and the amount of people's passions, commitment, building their skills over decades to be able to program the systems, work on everything, and make sure that exhibit all comes together. What a wonderful opportunity to spend some time with all of you, talking a little bit more about that work, shedding more light on all of the really amazing careers and jobs and just love for the ocean that comes together into an exhibit like Into the Deep. And we are so thankful for your time. Emily, do we have anything else to wrap up with here? We've kept them a little bit longer. They need to go back and check the water, I think, at some point here. But
well, we've definitely inspired some scientists out there nowadays, or future scientists out there nowadays. Never too late to become one.
Exactly.
So just a huge thank you again from us and from the internet in general. I count the entire internet thanking you right now. Yeah, thanks for hanging out today and answering those questions, Kasie and Kyle.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, great stuff.
Absolutely. This was great. Thanks for having us.
Sweet. Thank you. So for the folks out there who are watching, Into the Deep, Exploring Our Undiscovered Ocean will be when it opens the largest exhibition of deep sea life in North America. It opens April 9th, 2022. If you have any incentive to get a membership for the aquarium, now would be the time, because you will get some special member previews. There will be more shows. If you're wondering, why didn't they talk about any animals right now? Well, we've got a lot of reveals for those animals during the member live coming up on March 23rd. And then also with that membership, you're able to visit as many days as you want. Go and see Kasie and Kyle's incredible work there with the pumps and pipes. And with that, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. If you are just coming in right now, this will be available as a replay once it gets processed on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. And come hang out with us over on our Discord channel. You can find that link all around, and also on our website. Scroll down to the bottom and continue that conversation over there on Discord, and share with us those Photoshop photos of Kyle lassoing whatever it is that you're able to come up with. Yes. We'll be able to share those on the next stream. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We hope to deep see you again very, very soon here at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.